In the second set of our conditional statements notes, we have biconditional statements, and that means it's the conjunction of the conditional statement and its converse. So what that means is you can read the statement forward, so if P then Q, and you can also read it backwards. You could say if the conclusion part first happens, then the hypotenuse will happen last. So the way that we write that is instead of just one arrow, we actually write a double arrow. Will be biconditional, so you can read it P if and only if Q. The biconditional statements are true when only both the conditional and the converse are both true. So if you were asked for the truth value of a biconditional statement, you need to first figure out if the conditional is true and if the converse are true. And if they're both true, then you can say yes, the biconditional will also be true. For number one, if we are given the biconditional statement, we need to write both the conditional and the converse statements. Remember, the first part is still mentioning the P, or the hypothesis. The second part of the sentence is still mentioning the Q, so that's how we can pull it apart. Your conditional then is if P, then Q. Your converse will be Q first, and then P. So our conditional would be if two angles are supplementary. The conclusion then would be the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. Remember, the converse, then we switch the order, so we would say if the sum of their angles is, or if the sum of their measures is 180 degrees, then they are supplementary. When you need to determine the truth value of our biconditional statement, we need to know the individual statements if they are true. So if two angles are supplementary, then the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. Is that always true? Yes, that will always be true, so that statement is true. For the next one, we have if the sum of the measures of two angles is 180 degrees, then they are supplementary. And that would always be true as well, that no matter where those angles are located, if the sum of them is 180 degrees, then those would be considered supplementary. Because these both of our statements are true, that means that the biconditional statement will also be true. For these next couple of questions, I'm going to mix it up and I'm not going to do all the pieces. So in this first one, I labeled that the first part of our sentence is our hypothesis, that's my P. It snows then would be the conclusion, so that's my Q. Remember, the conditional statement is always our P, or if P then Q, or P implies Q. So we're going to write, if I wear my snow boots, then it snows. So I want you now to fill in what is the truth value of just that statement, so that when we get to the biconditional, we can determine if the final one will be true or false. So the question is, if I wear my snow boots, will it always snow? That's kind of the easier way of noticing it. So if you're wearing your snow boots, does that mean it's going to snow? No, it is not. So that statement would be a false, have a false truth value. Because of this, we know that the final truth value of our biconditional statement will be false because at least our conditional is false. So it doesn't really matter how the converse ends up, but because our conditional is already false, we know that the truth value for our biconditional will also be false. On the next one, I want you to fill in what is the conditional statement. So you kind of divide up your P and your Q. I want you to set up what your conditional statement would look like. What you should have written is if x squared equals 25, then x equals 5. For the converse, we have that if x equals 5, then x squared equals 25. Now in this one, for the truth values, if x squared equals 25, then x equals 5. And x will not only equal 5, it will also equal a negative 5. That's the part that everyone always forgets, because if you have a negative 5 squared, that will give you 25, but so does a 5. So this is not going to be true in all situations. For the converse then, if x equals 5, when we square that, yes, it will always equal 25. But again, since we have the false on the conditional, we know that our truth value for the biconditional will be false.